The Panther is a good light mech. It's a good, slow light mech. It's my favorite one. It is a good slugger that swings above its weight class, and today I'm going to show you how to paint it. And I'm actually going to show you a technique that is going to work 100% of the time, 80% of the time, or something like that. Come find out. And there she is. The Panther is a mech that's gone through a lot of interpretations over the years, and the design has changed a lot. I think the modern version really hits the nail on the head. It's got a lot of good angles, it's got a lot of eye-catching little features. This isn't one of those mechs that stands out in a crowd because it's got something really extreme or definitive on it, but it's kind of like a Centurion. It's got just a lot of well-rounded features, a lot of little things to appreciate all over the body. Let's get started. As with most units, I'm going to use my favorite silver on it. We're going to do all of the actuators, we're going to do all of the tertiary parts. We're going to do vents, we're going to do jump jets, we're going to do actuators and joints and seals and things like that. We're going to cover the entire PPC here, and we're going to add the additional details on that later, but most of this is going to get painted in silver. I'm going to leave a little bit of it red, and then we'll come back and do a PPC glow a little later on in the video. Now, you might not believe me when I say it, but the Panther shares a lot of distinguishing features with the Atlas. That is to say, the two most important things on this mech are, in my opinion, the shoulders and the head. You look at the shoulders, they have some incredible angles that allow for some sharp edges and good edge highlights, and we're going to get into all this a little later. The other thing is that there are these three panels on the chest that allow for a lot of artistic flexibility. And we're going to end up utilizing that in a big way later on, all these big open panels. I'm going to get a black speed paint, and I'm going to go over all the silver parts that I painted previously once they've dried. This is going to act as, rather than using like a Nuln oil, this is going to act as obviously to color it and to give it shadow and depth and all that. A little later on, it's going to go without saying, we're going to go over all these silver parts with silver again once the black is dried. Just to give those the highlights. Obviously, I have painted this Panther red as a base coat already. I'm not really super concerned with going through the nuts and bolts in every single video on the base colors and all that. You can paint it whatever color you want. I'm going with a Kurita red. The Panther is a very Kurita mech, and so I'm going to paint it in Kurita red, and we're going to give it a little bit of Kurita flavor a little later on in the video. We've gotten black all across the unit, so on the PPC there, on the weapons, on the actuators, and on the jump jet pack on the rear. Now, the thing to notice about the Panther is that there are very few actual defining features on this throughout the mech. That is to say, we've got pretty average looking legs, very average looking arms. However, 90% of what makes this mech unique is in fact the head, short of the PPC, but like I said, we're going to come back and give that some additional detail. The other 10% is going to be how sharp the panels are and how broad they are as well. You have some very deep and definitive lines all throughout the mech on the legs and on the chest, and we're going to make really good use of that. Now, to do this, we're going to start with the indentations. This is who makes this? Tamiya makes this. This is a Tamiya panel line accent color. Now, this is black, and I want to say this also comes in gray and tan and green. This product is actually intended for gunpla and airplanes and things like that. You'll see this on larger models. On Battletech minis, it's kind of hit or miss because it comes with an applicator brush inside, and it's a little large. It's not a fine tip brush, and so it makes for a tricky application. But on this Panther, we have a lot of deep cuts, and so it's going to go on real smoothly here. You can see how broad that head can be, but once you get it into the right place, mwah. And so this is, I want to say this is called an oil wash, basically is what it is. It's got a different viscosity than acrylics and water, and so it flows really seamlessly into seams. You can go on the YouTube and find videos of this. It'll like just shoot all the way across the wing of a model plane. It's actually really remarkable. So we're going to use this in all of the nooks and crannies. We're going to get this, and this is basically going to be our low light, and this is basically just going to make all of the lines in this unit pop. And if you go over on any of these spots with this, you can just wipe it off with a finger. Otherwise, it's going to stain your base color like a Nuln oil would. but it's not going to be even because it's not coating the entire panel, if that makes sense. You'll see me wiping this off occasionally with my finger. And using this is kind of like edge highlighting. You can overdo it. Get as much as you feel comfortable with, but trying to get every single nook and cranny is going to do the same thing as trying to highlight every single edge on a unit. Like by the end of it, you're just doing too much. So what you don't want to do is, the point of this is to draw attention to the right things and not have it be too busy. And don't be afraid to be generous with it to shade certain areas. Now, if you notice, you will see that on this mini, I have already applied my hazard stripe. This is a special decal that I have developed specifically for Battletech, and it goes on, it applies real easily, they stay on for a very long time, they have good adhesive, and you can upgrade your mini immediately. If you're interested in getting some for yourself, you can get them on my Etsy store, which I will link down below. Now, for our secondary color, we're going to do probably this weapon bronze, and then we may end up highlighting with the gold here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get the lower part, or the outer part of these shoulders, and we're going to end up hitting a couple panels all throughout. Now, I'm intentionally being very selective with what panels I'm getting. I want to put this secondary color on what you might describe as secondary panels. So basically the second largest panels on any given part. I'm not doing the biggest panels here on the legs. I'm going to do the second largest. I'm not doing the largest panels on the shoulders. I'm doing the smaller part. And when it comes to weapons and these tertiary areas, anything that's black, I'm just using them as a highlight or as a as like an extra feature. So we're going to get these little jump jet circles on the back. We're going to get the vents here, and we're going to kind of just put them wherever it makes sense. And we're going to put some on the little spots on the legs and the feet as well. Because this is a metallic, I recommend going over this with 2 coats, even though it looks pretty opaque just with once out the bottle. It doesn't hurt to get a second coat on there. Now, one of the most defining features of this miniature is up here on the head, and it is the ears. We are going to get the ears of this panther, because if you haven't noticed, and it can be kind of hard to see, the panther has a panther head. You might not even notice it if you don't even know to look for it, but once you see it, you can't miss it. So you have this portion on the top of the head that looks like eyes, and then you actually have teeth on the left and right hand side of the main cockpit viewport. So the cockpit, the eyes, the teeth, and the ears are really what makes this head special. Now, as you can see, I have already gone ahead and painted the cockpit glass, as well as the side ports and the, I guess, quote-unquote eyeball ports on this. And you may have noticed that I have not shown you how to paint cockpits yet. I'm going to do a separate video on how to paint cockpits very easily. And then we'll do probably a more in-depth tutorial at a later time. So go ahead and paint your cockpit however you're going to do it. And then we're going to move on to do a few edge highlights, but nothing incredible, because something ends up happening here in a moment that undoes a lot of my work. So I've got a little bit of white on this PPC. I'm not trying to go crazy with this. I'm just going to throw a little purple on there, give it some glow, give it some haze. And this PPC is actually not one of our focal points today, as much as, even though it's a huge primary weapon, it's just not what we're focusing on. So we're going to give it a little bit of glow, nothing crazy, that like we're not going Warhammer status on this here. You'll also notice that I have done the lens on the PPC as well. Again, this is like the cockpit. However you want to do your lenses and your weapon ports, go ahead and just do that. I've also put silver on the SRM, on the jump jets, on the back unit here, and I've just added a little bit of silver highlights to that to finish up the metallic look. Now we're going to move on to our gold highlights. I was going to use that golden paint that I had previously, but then I realized my wife had this. This is a highlight pen, which I've never used before, either on paper or on anything else, but we're going to give it a shot on this mini. And as you can see, it actually goes on pretty nicely. When I was doing this, I was actually very pleasantly surprised. So I'm doing just kind of an ad hoc impromptu dragon here on the shoulder and up the left arm. The right hand arm obviously is occupied by a ginormous cannon, so you can't really do this on both sides, but I just throw in some details, a curling Chinese dragon or something, just to give it a little bit of character. And now I'm going to actually go through and I'm going to do the edges, not the actual edges, but rather the outline the panels on this. And when it comes to edge highlights, I am very much a believer that you want to use that strategically. You don't want to go crazy on that. However, when it came to using this pen, I found that it was so easy and so fun to use because you're basically coloring on a unit. And the large panels on this Panther, you can do so much with it. You can go on the edges, you can draw on the inside. And as you look, I got these little dimples here on the center of the chest here. So I'm going to actually try and see if I have enough precision with this pen to go up and around those indents. And just a couple of lines, I'm able to make some rectangles around that. I don't know that I would be able to do this with a brush, me personally. But here I'm able to just easily draw it on and continue on with the panel lines. And see, if you want to go really hard on this, I am not using this for edge highlights. I am just outlining the panels, and that's a little different from edge highlights. I'm not trying to run this along the actual edge. I'm just going around the outside of the panel. So in theory, you could do both if you were really sweaty and wanted to do both, and it would probably look great. But as you can see, if you look too closely, you can see that, I like to play it fast and loose. I'm not super concerned about the details. You can see on the rear there, I have some of those highlights, but a lot of it, what I initially put in, just gets covered by this pen because I realized, oh, it just pops so well. And so I just kept going with it. I just kept discovering more and more spots that I thought this would look really good in, and I kept adding them. And initially I thought I don't want to overdo the gold lines on this, but then something peculiar happened. I just kept going, and the more I went, the better it looked. So I went ahead and I did the teeth on the Panther. I made them gold. And then I brought it around and I did the outside of the ears. And then I would do the outside of the cockpit glass and the panels. The other thing to consider is that you have a lot of artistic real estate on the top of the head. The only thing I wish is that this gold was maybe a shade darker. But as you can see, as we draw the lines on the panels along the chest here, this gives us a cool, like Chinese dynasty kind of vibe. And I found that I was enjoying using this pen so much. I'm definitely going to get more of these pens, and we're going to use this in future projects. It almost felt like cheating, but remember, these are just a tool. Don't be scared to try new, strange, and obscure paints or markers or anything like that, because it's just tools in a toolkit. So that's pretty much it for the Panther. I don't know that I have a story to tell you this week, uh, although I will say that there is a incredible podcast called Of Mechs and Men, where they go through and they read the Battletech books. And what they do is they read a couple chapters, and in each podcast episode, they go through almost line by line and discuss the stories and chapter by chapter, line by line. And the way they talk about Battletech books, it actually makes the books way better, because some Battletech books can be really hard to follow. But when you have somebody pointing out, like, oh, these two chapters are 10 years apart, you don't always catch that when you're just reading the books like you normally would a book. I say all that to say, they have just finished, I guess you could say, the Draconis Combine duology, Wolves on the Border and Heir to the Dragon, a pair of incredible stories about Minobu Tetsuhara and his brother, and Jamie Wolfe, and the Draconis Combine, and how they have basically gone crazy during this particular point of the timeline. Takashi Kirita, and how he is ultimately failing as a leader, and how his son rises to power without usurping his father. And they're great stories, and in both of these stories, they feature a lot of Panthers, frankly, getting smoked. Panthers in these two stories get treated like stormtroopers in Star Wars. A lance of Panthers will come out of the tree line and just get absolutely steamrolled. And it's like Panthers are like the Draconis Combine's urban mech or something. Like, it's just cannon fodder. But I love Panthers. They're fun to use. They're slow and sluggish, but that PPC on a light mech, like, that's nothing to sneeze about. It if you can land your shots, they're great. But if not, well, then they're not as awesome. But they do have jump jets. So there's that. For this particular unit, I'm just adding some sand, I'm adding some stones, and a little bit of dry grass, and we are calling it a day, I reckon. Is this a technique that you feel comfortable using when it comes to using uh, anything that's not paint to paint a mech? I know some people like to say that's cheating. I remember when speed paints were really becoming popular, you know, contrast paints and speed paints. People were saying that's cheating, that's not real painting. To which I say, you know, what about airbrushing and things like that? I don't know that anybody really holds that opinion anymore, uh, because speed paints are awesome. Now, I would argue that speed paints are not necessarily for mechs. Maybe I'll do a video on that. Tell me what you think in the comments. I don't know that speed paints are good for mechs, and I will do a video. I will do a video on that. Now that the base is done, the hazard stripe sticker is applied. I'm going to use some of this Tester's Dull Coat to coat my mini, that way it's protected. But this is the matte version, which will keep everything from being shiny in the light. It'll allow all those muted colors of the red and those deeper blacks to remain that way, and the shimmering portions of the gold will not get dulled down too much. Those will still be able to shine through a little bit. This is a great product. If you don't have this on your desk, you really ought to. And remember, if you're interested in getting some of those decals for your bases, you can get those on my Etsy store down below. And if you order something in the close to near future, I might even toss in some bonuses for you. I appreciate you guys coming and watching this next tutorial. I pray that the Lord will bless you and enrich you deeply this week, and I'll see you on the next one.